Hello, my name is Michelle McMurry-Heath, and I'm from the Center for Devices in Radiological Health, and I chose to use slides just because I'm supposed to try to tell you about two programs we have to try to take an innovative approach to addressing the conflict of interest restrictions. As, I think you heard this morning at FDA, we take a very rigorous interpretation of our conflict of interest. So if you can show the next slide. Our center director, Jeff Shuren, is both a MD and a JD. And perhaps that's why he's really called upon the center to really think about how we can stratify our risk when it comes to conflict of interest. As I mentioned this morning, we regulate everything from Band-Aids and condoms to heart valves and MRI machines. And so the only way to cover that vast array is to take a risk-based approach. And in our regulations, the lowest risk devices actually don't even have to seek clearance or approval before they go on the market. They just have to notify us that they're on the market. And our highest risk devices, those that could actually harm human health or play a pivotal role in a patient's care, those really have to seek approval or clearance before they go on the market and have to prove safety and or efficacy. So this is the approach we've also taken to how we might more creatively use conflict of interest. Next slide. So there's two programs that illustrate this approach. One is our network of experts. As you heard this morning, experts serving as special government employees on review panels or advisory committees have to go through a very stringent review of their potential conflicts. But we thought our scientists and our reviewers needed access to the latest cutting-edge scientific and clinical information in the field without necessarily going to that extent in terms of clearance. And we thought this was important because our scientists and reviewers go to scientific meetings, and these are very helpful. They read scientific journals, but that doesn't give you the opportunity to ask a specific question when you need a specific answer. And so we wanted to set up a way for those scientists and reviewers in the Center for Devices to have access to expertise at their call. So we did this by setting up what we call a network of experts. And we said, where can we find this expertise? And we decided to focus on professional societies that are either clinical or scientific in nature, hopefully honorific, i.e. membership is honorific as it is for the Institute of Medicine, and that they're hopefully 501c3s or have non-lobbying goals as their primary mechanisms of action. We then set up research collaboration agreements with these individual organizations, and this is just a schematic to show how this would work. And these research collaboration agreements clear the entire organization for conflicts of interest and protect the communications with those organizations by confidential disclosure agreements. And then when our individual scientists and reviewers have a specific scientific question, we can put out a call to all of the organizations in the network and say, do you have any experts that might be able to answer this scientific or clinical question? Now, it's important that the answer must be scientific or clinical in nature. We're not asking these experts their policy or personal opinions, and it's restricted in that scope. But once we put out that call, they can then respond with the names of the relevant experts. And these individual experts then are further screened for conflict of interest. And they fill out an individual conflict of interest form, and if needed, a confidential disclosure agreement form. And they can then speak with members of FDA, of our Center for Devices, either one-on-one or in group calls. If you go to the next slide. Now, I mentioned that these individual experts have to fill out a conflict of interest form, but we ask them to do this very rapidly. The turnaround from our call to the organization to getting a list of these experts with their completed information and their completed conflict of interest form is 7 days. So this is an incredibly rapid procedure. We knew the only way to make that happen was to have an incredibly streamlined conflict of interest procedure. So our conflict of interest form, our longest one, is 1 page. And we have a very, very, very streamlined set of questions. And they are questions that don't take research. We don't ask, has anyone in your institution received any funding from an HHS entity? Which is often a question that they'll get asked, for example, on a special government employee form, which takes research with their institution. We ask very, very simplified and streamlined questions. And it's meant to take them perhaps an hour to do. And the type of form that they get is based on the potential risk of the question that they are going to be asked. So we stratify the calls to the experts into 3 categories, A, B, and C. So A is of limited risk. If you're asking a general question, can you tell me what you know about high blood pressure? If you're asking a general question about a field of engineering, science, or medicine, that's very, very limited risk of conflict. And so we ask a very, very simplified conflict of interest set of questions, and it's very, very basic. Level B is of moderate risk, and that's when you're asking about a specific product line or a specific medical indication. So, for example, tell me how the HB1B test is used for diabetes. Tell me what's the latest in treatment for congestive heart failure. Then you're asking about a more limited set of scientific and clinical indications, and it might have some specific product information included in your answer. And so then we ask a few more detailed questions, but still very simple. And then there's C, category C, when you're asking about a specific product that's regulated by the Center for Devices or a set of specific products. So if you're asking about the Melody heart valve, then you're asking a very, very specific set of questions about a very, very specific product, and that takes a full conflict of interest form, which is still pretty streamlined, and that is pre-vetted. So for levels A and B, we actually allow the experts to self-certify their risk. So they say, these are our conflicts, and we only do a spot checking. We do an auditing afterwards to make sure that they're being truthful in providing their information. Only C is pre-verified before the calls. So this allows us to get experts to our scientists and reviewers within 4 to 6 weeks, which in government time frame is very, very quick. I'm sorry, I've only made it through one of the programs, so I'll just leave it to that. Yeah.
Thanks, Michelle. Next we have Guy Tism from Cleveland.